Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. In Myanmar, 5 people have been killed after security forces opened fire on the pro-democracy protesters. People have taken to the streets again despite more than 550 deaths since the February 1st coup. Meanwhile, the ruling military has intensified its crackdown on dissent by blocking internet services. The United States, Japan and South Korea have agreed to keep up pressure on North Korea to abandon its nuclear and ballistic missiles programs. The national security advisors of the 3 countries issued a joint statement after high-level security talks in Maryland. They reaffirmed their commitment to denuclearization through trilateral cooperation. A police officer has died after a suspect rammed a vehicle into the security barriers surrounding the U.S. Capitol. In a statement, Capitol Police said he also stabbed one officer who sustained non-threatening injuries. They said it does not appear to be a terrorism-related incident, but an investigation is underway. The global number of coronavirus infections has surpassed 130 million, with the death toll over 2.8 million. The virus continues to batter Brazil, which reported nearly 3,000 fatalities overnight. The Netherlands is the latest country to pause inoculations with the AstraZeneca vaccine in people under 60 years of age. Here in Pakistan, the virus has infected more than 4,000 people and claims 84 lives overnight. Nationwide, the death toll is approaching 14,700. Well, these were top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We start from Myanmar, where security forces have killed another 5 pro-democracy protesters. People have taken to the streets again, despite more than 550 deaths since the 1st of February coup. Protesters gathered against the military in the southern city of Dai Wei and elsewhere. Meanwhile, the ruling military has intensified its crackdown on dissent by blocking internet services. Authorities have issued warrants for another 18 people, including celebrities and journalists, for online posts. The United States has condemned the internet shutdown in the country. In a statement, State Department spokesperson Zelina Porter said hopefully this won't silence the voices of the people. The United States, Japan and South Korea have agreed to keep up pressure on North Korea to abandon its nuclear and ballistic missiles program. The national security advisors of the 3 countries issued a joint statement after high-level talks in Maryland. The 3 sides reaffirmed their commitment to denuclearization through trilateral cooperation. They stressed the need for full implementation of a UN Security Council resolutions on North Korea. The counterparts also agreed to strengthen deterrence and maintain peace on the Korean peninsula. The talks coincide with heightened tensions in the region after Pyongyang launched 4 missiles last week. Now, in the United States, a police officer has died after a suspect rammed a vehicle into the security barriers surrounding the Capitol. In a statement, the Capitol Police said he also stabbed another officer who sustained non-threatening injuries. Police say in less than 2 hours they had shot dead the suspect. They said the incident does not appear to be terrorism-related, but an investigation is underway. Members of Congress were not in Washington, with both the Senate and the House of Representatives in recess for the Easter holiday. President Joe Biden was also out of the city. Now, the United States has lifted sanctions on International Criminal Court prosecutor Fatou Bensouda. The former Trump administration imposed the curbs on Bensouda over her probe into U.S. war crimes in Afghanistan. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken termed the sanctions inappropriate and ineffective. In a statement, Blinken said the State Department has also terminated visa restrictions on certain ICC personnel. He said the U.S. continues to disagree with the body's actions relating to Afghanistan and Palestinians' situations. However, Blinken added U.S. concerns will be better addressed through engagement with the ICC. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the ICC said the court welcomes Washington's move. Also, the U.S. has reiterated calls for Iran to release all American citizens detained in the country. A State Department spokesperson says unjust detentions for political gain must cease immediately. In a press briefing, Jelena Porter said the safe return of those detained in Iran or elsewhere is a top priority for Washington. She called on the Iranian government to also immediately and safely release a British citizen detained in Tehran. Porter's comments come as the U.S. and Iran are set to hold indirect talks in Vienna from Tuesday. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called on Israel to ensure equal treatment of Palestinians. Blinken spoke on the phone with Israeli Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi. The State Department says Blinken asserted that Israelis and Palestinians should enjoy equal measures of security and democracy. A statement read that the two leaders discussed humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. It said the two also spoke about Israel's normalization with ties with Arab countries. Blinken has also discussed Tel Aviv's ties with Manama in a phone call with his Bahraini counterpart. The two mulled off ways to capitalize on progress made at the U.S.-Bahrain strategic dialogue in December. Now, the U.S. has reaffirmed its support for Kiev amid reports of a large Russian military buildup near eastern Ukraine. This came as President Joe Biden held telephone talks with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky. Biden said the U.S. will continue backing Ukraine's sovereignty in Donbass and Crimea. According to Zelensky's chief of staff, Biden said Ukraine will never be left alone against Russia's aggression. Western nations and NATO have voiced concern over Russia's troops movement near Ukraine's eastern Donbass region. Earlier, Russia warned NATO against deploying troops to Ukraine, saying the move will escalate the tension. Moving on now, the G7 and European Union say they are strongly concerned about reports of human rights abuses in Ethiopia's conflict-hit Tigray region. Foreign ministers of leading economic powers have urged all parties to exercise restraint and respect human rights. The group condemned the killing of civilians, sexual and gender-based violence and indiscriminate shelling. In a joint statement, they called for a transparent investigation into the crimes reported and for those responsible to be held account. The ministers welcomed the announcement from Ethiopia's Prime Minister that Eritrean forces will withdraw from Tigray. Now, the global number of coronavirus infections has surpassed 130 million, with the death toll over 2.8 million. The virus continues to batter Brazil, which reported nearly 3,000 fatalities overnight. The Netherlands is the latest country to pause inoculations with the AstraZeneca vaccine in people under 60 years of age. Details in this report.
Countries may not be subject to drastic lockdown measures introduced during the first wave of coronavirus, but many still face another spring of physical distancing and the persistent fear of more restrictions. Christians all around the world marked Good Friday amid lingering virus woes. Meanwhile, Argentina's president, Alberto Fernandez, has tested positive for COVID-19 in an antigen test. The White House says the resurgence of the virus is a bigger worry than inflation in the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says cases and hospitalizations in the U.S. have spiked over the last 7 days.
CDC's most recent data show the 7-day average of new cases is now slightly above 62,000 cases per day, a continued increase over the 7-day period. Similar to cases, new hospitalizations continue to increase, with the most recent 7-day average at nearly 4,950 admissions per day.
Controversy surrounding the AstraZeneca vaccine causing blood clots continue to unfurl. The United Kingdom has reported 7 fatalities after administering Oxford's jab, although experts reiterate that the vaccine's benefits outweigh the risks. France has reported the biggest jump in ICU patients in more than 5 months. Meanwhile, Germany has marked a quiet start to Easter following efforts to combat the third wave by restricting social gatherings.
We desperately wanted to go to Ocean over Easter. Initially, we wanted to go to Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania, but then we realized that that state has been closed and has a curfew over Easter and does not allow day tourists.
Russia is working on a program to offer people abroad the chance to get vaccinated with the Sputnik 5 shot from July. Meanwhile, India's Maharashtra state has warned of a full lockdown if people do not limit their movement.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported another 84 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the death toll is approaching 14,700. The ministry said more than 4,700 people tested positive for the virus in the last 24 hours. Pakistan has reported nearly 683,000 infections since the pandemic began, out of which more than 609,000 people have recovered. The number of active cases in the country has crossed 58,000. Officials said nearly 3,500 people are in critical condition across the country, whereas the coronavirus positivity ratio has decreased to 9.41%. Moving on now, China has rejected European Union's allegations of harassing foreign correspondents and driving them out of the country. This comes after Brussels said John Sudworth has harassed and blocked from working in China. In a statement, the Chinese mission to the European Union said Sudworth worked and lived in China for 9 years. It said if Sudworth did not spread disinformation, there is no need for him to worry about litigation. The representative said Beijing protects the safety of foreign nationals in China per law. However, Beijing said it rejects prejudice against China and disinformation in the name of a free press. Now, Taiwan says European countries are helping with Taipei's indigenous submarine project. In a rare admission, the Defense Ministry said the sensitive program is not only getting assistance from the US. The ministry denied a report that North Korea had discussed helping Taiwan with the submarines. It said there has never been, there is not now, and will never be any contact with Pyongyang over the issue. Officials said important countries in Europe and the US are providing all help without going into details. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's move on with the news stories. Turkey says it strongly rejects claims by Athens that Ankara pushed migrant boats into Greek waters. Turkish Deputy Interior Minister Ismail Katakli says Greece distorted the events and is telling lies. In a statement, Katakli said Athens pushed back 231 migrants in 7 incidents on Friday. He added Ankara rescued the asylum seekers. Katakli said it is a crime against humanity to slander the Turkish Coast Guard that saves people. The NATO allies disagree on multiple issues, including energy resources in the Mediterranean and the refugee crisis. Now, in the UK, activists are holding rallies today as part of a national weekend of action against proposed police law. The police crime sentencing and courts bill will toughen measures that officers can take to disperse protest. Activists, climate change campaigners and Black Lives Matter movement says they will join Kill the Bill rallies in London and other cities. In London, police have warned of enforcement action if needed in the interest of public health. The bill includes imposing time and noise limits, which campaigners and activists fear would be used to curb dissent. Since the bill was brought before Parliament last month, there have been sporadic protests, notably in Bristol, southwest England. Now, British skateboard prodigy Sky Brown says she has fully recovered from her life-threatening fall last May. The 12-year-old plans to broaden her horizons by adding surfing to her Olympic schedule. This report has details.
A horrible accident while skating is enough to make most people think twice about continuing the sport. But Sky Brown remains undeterred and is working hard towards her goal. She suffered skull fractures and a broken wrist after she fell from a half-pipe in South California. Brown says the experience has only added fuel to her considerable fire.
Going higher now, I learned some new tricks, and I can't wait. It's going to be really cool, and I think all the girls are getting better too, so now we just have a better show.
Brown has excelled on both boards from an early age and would be a formidable dual-threat Olympian. Like every athlete, Brown had to cope with the disappointment of the one-year delay of the Tokyo Games.
Well, at first, when I heard the Olympics, was delayed, I was sad. I thought my dreams were, gone. Like, I couldn't be in the Olympics anymore, and I felt sad. But then I realized it was just delayed, and, we just get more time to get better, and I got to spend time with my family.
Through her fall and recovery, Brown has remained upbeat and focused on inspiring others, especially other aspiring female athletes.
Well, now in South Korea, a young couple accidentally vandalized a painting worth about $500,000 at a gallery in Seoul. CCTV cameras captured them picking up and daubing paint over the artwork. Exhibition head Kang Wook says the couple thought they were allowed to paint over the graffiti as participatory art. Police arrested them after reviewing the CCTV footage, but they were released later on. The gallery did not press charges against them, considering their act to be an honest mistake. Kang says discussions with the artist are underway on how to restore the wall art. After the incident, the gallery has put up a wire fence and additional signs saying, "Do not touch." Now let's have a look at how the weather is doing across the world. That is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.